What is up, everybody? JT Sports here, back to you guys with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. On this episode, I am here with my Tennessee versus Georgia preview and prediction. Listen, I am really excited about this game. Everybody is talking about the implications of this game, the college football playoffs, the fact that there is a spot in the SEC championship game in Atlanta at stake in this game as well. But, the reason why I'm so excited about this game is because, believe it or not, even though I'm not a Tennessee fan or a Georgia fan, this rivalry is what made me a fan of college football, because this game gave me one of my most memorable moments of my whole entire life. I remember back in 2016 when Joshua Dobbs threw that Hail Mary touchdown pass to Jawan Jennings. That play was just so magical and nostalgic. And before I recorded this, I went back and I watched that game, and I rewatched that play over and over again. And that play really is what made me such a fan of this sport. And don't get me wrong, I talk about the NFL too. I love the NFL just as much as I love college football. But what makes college football so special is just how the games end. Every game doesn't end the same way. All these close games have different endings, and they're all very memorable. And this game gave me some of my most memorable moments as a fan of not just college football, but football in general. And I'm expecting a really good game between these two teams. And it's funny because I feel like the public perception and, the perception that Vegas and odds makers have when it comes to this game are very different. I feel like if we were in charge of making the spreads for this game, the majority of college football fans will probably have Tennessee as the favorite going in. Now, I don't know what the point spread would be, but it seems like a lot of people feel like Tennessee's going to win this game. However, ESPN's FPI Football Power Index only gives Tennessee a 25% chance of winning this game, and Vegas has Georgia as an 8-point favorite. And this game is pretty much the SEC championship, or the SEC East championship game. Tennessee, for them, this is pretty much their last big test of the regular season, because after this, their next 3 games, they are all going to be favored in. They play Missouri at home, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt on the road to close out the season. And meanwhile, for Georgia, they are now starting to get to the meat of their schedule. Right at the end of the season, their last 3 games after this one, they have back-to-back road trips against Mississippi State and Kentucky. Then they play Georgia Tech at home to close off the regular season. So this is a really huge game for Tennessee, because this season for the Vols kind of has been like a video game. Their first big boss battle was against Pittsburgh, and they came up on top. Then their second big boss battle was against Alabama, and they beat that level. And now they're at level 3. The final boss battle of the regular season for the Vols is against the Georgia Bulldogs. And Georgia is a really hard team to get a read on going into this game, because you remember their week 1 domination over Oregon. However, that's week 1. And we all know week 1, not every team comes out playing their best football. Some teams come out a little bit rusty. Oregon wasn't able to get much going. Some people can probably attribute that to the fact that, Bo Nix was starting to get his first game at a new program with a new coaching staff, still trying to get acclimated to new teammates, a new system. So Georgia definitely probably wasn't the best game to start your tenure with at your new school if you're Bo Nix. But if Oregon was to play Georgia again, I wonder how that game will go. But Georgia's defense was stout against Oregon's offense, and Oregon's offense has been one of the best in college football this year. So for the people who are doubting Georgia's defense in this game, Georgia fans are probably going to use that as their counter argument. However, even if Georgia's defense was able to shut down Oregon's offense the way they did, and if they could replicate that performance, okay. But Tennessee's offense is on a different level, because not only do they have talent, you have NFL talent at wide receiver. You have Brooke McCoy. You have Jalen Hyatt, who is having a phenomenal campaign. You also do have Tillman, who is now starting to become a bigger role in this offense because he was dealing with injuries for a couple of weeks. So you have a lot of talent that you have to deal with if you are the secondary of Georgia. And Georgia's secondary has talent. However, I don't think their secondary has played up to the level of the talent that they have. As a matter of fact, it's been fairly inconsistent. And you look at the second half of their game against Florida, and yeah, they won that game by multiple scores. However, Anthony Richardson was throwing some dots against that Georgia secondary. And the back end, when you look at the safety position, I mean, really didn't play good against Florida. You look at Tennessee, and not just the talent that they possess at wide receiver, but their scheme. And I think that's what makes this so difficult for Georgia, because defensively, they aren't what they were last season. And I don't expect them to get many stops in this game. I do expect them to get a stop or two, but I'm not expecting this defense to come out and keep Tennessee from scoring under 28 points. I think for Georgia, their best chance at winning this game is by running the football, trying to keep Tennessee's offense off the field, and controlling time of possession. And they're more than capable of being able to do that. They are 6th in college football right now in total time of possession per game, trailing only Michigan and a couple of other schools. Not only that, but we know that Georgia, whenever they want to, is more than able to run the football at will against anybody. And I understand that Tennessee fans are probably going to push back against that because your run defense has been pretty solid. You were really good against Chris Rodriguez and Kentucky's rushing attack last week, which is something that you deserve a lot of credit for. And you shut down the rushing attack of LSU when you went on the road and blew them out 40-13. However, we also just can't overlook the games where Tennessee's run defense wasn't there. Florida had success on the ground against this defense. Alabama and Jahmyr Gibbs had success. So, even then, before I forget, Pittsburgh had success on the ground. So, when Tennessee has faced opponents that have had good offensive lines that are capable of being able to open up holes in the running game, they haven't been able to stop it. Georgia, their offensive line is really good. We can't forget that their running back core is one of the best in college football. I mean, they're stacked at running back. And for Tennessee, I think a nightmare scenario for Josh Heupel and company is them getting down 14 points in this game and they can't stop the run. And even though Tennessee can score fast as hell, if you cannot slow down Georgia's rushing attack and you allow Georgia to bleed the clock with a lead, it's really hard to win a game that way. Because at that point, you're going to need your defense to get some kind of stop. And it's going to be hard to get a stop at that point because your offense is already insanely fast. So your defense is already at a disadvantage in every game that you play in because they're on the field for more plays than normal. Not only that, but if Georgia can have success on the ground against you late in the game, you're never going to be able to get a stop because you're already tired from earlier. And plus, you're in the fourth quarter. You're super tired because now Georgia's just clocking it. They're having 7-8 minute drives. And if you're Tennessee, you might fall victim to just not having enough time. And another thing why I feel like the run game has to be the reason why Georgia wins this game is because, listen, I know Georgia has plenty of talent on offense. Okay, they have the best tight end room in maybe the history of college football. Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington. I mean, you have that dude, McConkey, who's going crazy right now, who also has been a big contributor in the passing game for Georgia this season. So I'm not saying that I don't think Georgia's offense can't win a shootout with Tennessee because they don't have the talent. I don't think that Georgia can win a shootout with Tennessee if this game goes that way, because I don't think that Georgia is going to be able to have a complete game where they don't have any turnovers if they do have to air the football out more than what they would like to a Stetson Bennett. And that's not a knock on Stetson Bennett. I don't want anybody to take it that way. I'm just saying that if this becomes a one possession game and it's going back and forth, who do you trust more late in the game? Hendon Hooker or Stetson Bennett? I would go with Hendon Hooker. And it's not just because Hendon Hooker has the best or one of the best touchdown to interception ratios in the country and he takes care of the football, but it's simply for the fact that also Tennessee is top 10 in America in takeaways per game. You look at Stetson Bennett, he threw a couple against Florida. And one thing that we all know about Stetson Bennett, even last year during Georgia's championship run, he does have moments where he can be streaky. We saw it when Georgia lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game last year. He was streaky. In the college football playoffs, Stetson Bennett didn't really have to do much. But when he was asked to do much, when he was asked to have to make a big play, he was able to deliver. But in this game against Tennessee, you have to deliver almost every single drive. Because, let's be honest, you Georgia fans know it too. Unless last year's defense comes back, this year's defense probably isn't going to be good enough to get you too many stops. So you're going to have to be damn near flawless and highly efficient on offense. And Joe Klatt was talking about it a couple of days ago when he was doing his recap of the Penn State-Ohio State game. He said that Ohio State and Penn State were operating at high levels of offensive efficiency. And I think for Georgia in this game, you got to do that. And this may sound, a little weird to say, but even though Georgia is the better team, talent-wise, according to 247's team talent composite rankings, I feel like they have a smaller margin of error in this game than Tennessee. Because Tennessee's offense is going to be there. They're going to be able to put points up on the board. And they're going to be able to do it fast. But for Georgia, I don't know if their offense can keep up with Tennessee every single possession. And as I mentioned earlier, the fact that, Stetson Bennett is prone to being streaky at times. And also the fact that Tennessee can take away the football. Georgia isn't good at forcing takeaways this year. Plus, they're playing a team that doesn't give the football away all that often. So for Georgia, for all you Georgia fans who are going to say, well, we're going to find a way to slow down Tennessee's offense, how? Where is something on Tennessee's offense that Georgia's defense can exploit? Because their pass rush hasn't been there. As a matter of fact, they just lost their best pass rusher a couple of days ago due to injury in Nolan Smith. And he was leading the team in sacks with 3. So Georgia is down without him, and you struggle to produce a significant pass rush all this year. I just don't think that Georgia is just magically going to have somebody who pops. And I understand that they recruit at a really high level. I'm not knocking that. But the thing is, if you haven't had a pass rush all year, I don't think that a guy coming off the bench is going to be able to replace your best pass rusher and then give you that. Something that you haven't really had at your arsenal all this season. So if you can't get pressure on Tennessee, how are you going to be able to get them off the field if you get them into third down situations? Because we know how dynamic Hendon Hooker is when he decides to tuck the football and run, and we know what he can do when you give him time to throw the football. So for Georgia, your defense struggles at getting turnovers and struggles at producing sacks. And you have to be able to get pressure on Hendon Hooker if you want to be able to get them off the field on third down. And not just that, but for Georgia, there were a lot of missed tackles in the second half of that Florida game. And even then, you go back and you look at the game against Missouri, Kent State, it's just that Tennessee, every single week, has come out and showed us why they're one of the best teams in college football. And for Georgia, we know they're one of the best teams in college football, but they haven't been as consistent as Tennessee, which is why so many people like myself, kind of, if we were making odds for this game, would probably favor Tennessee, even with them going on the road. And Georgia is a really good second half team, which is something that you have to be when you're trying to beat Tennessee, because they start off super fast. But if Georgia can get off to a fast start and they can get off to a lead, that would drastically increase their chances of being able to win this game. And then plus you can get the play action pass game going if you can set up that run game. You get Brock Bowers, you got Darnell Washington. And for Tennessee, defensively, I'm not really expecting much out of them, because I think that their defense is really good. However, I don't think their defense is going to be able to get too many stops against Georgia's offense. However, they are going to have the opportunities at turnovers. Stetson Bennett is going to throw you a couple of passes that you are going to have a chance at. And if you're Tennessee, with you being top 10 and forcing turnovers, you should be able to take the ball away, capitalize off that, and be able to win this game. So that's why I'm going to take the Vols to win this game. I don't really know if this would count as an upset because they are the higher ranked team. However, Vegas does have Georgia as a 8-point favorite, so it technically could be considered an upset. But the reason why I'm going to take Tennessee is because Georgia, I don't think that they can play efficient enough to beat you. And plus, I don't know just how good or how many stops their defense is going to be able to get late in this game. And I probably would go out on a limb and say I trust Tennessee's defense more than I trust Georgia's defense in this game. And it may sound odd to say that, but it's not because I think Tennessee has a better defense than Georgia. I just think that, Stetson Bennett, I don't trust him late in the game. And with Tennessee being as good as what they have been at getting after the quarterback and forcing turnovers late in the game, I think Stetson Bennett throws an interception that seals the win for Tennessee. I'm going to take the Vols to get the win. I think they improved to 9-0. I'm not going to give a score prediction in this game because that's going to be too much of a headache. But I am going to take the Vols to stay undefeated and improve to 9-0 on the year. If you're still listening to this, I appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Make sure that you check out the podcast on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Go ahead, give it a 5-star review. We're currently at 49 5-star reviews. We're trying to get to 50 by the end of this week. help us make that happen by looking up the JT Sports Podcast, giving us a 5-star review. Also, if you're listening to this on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys.